Okay, welcome. Time of the year, back to school. And we have our CEO, superintendent, the leader of our school system here to bring us up to speed. If somebody doesn't know who you are, why don't we start with an intro?
So Kevin McIntyre, superintendent of Milford Public Schools. Thanks for having me back, Al. It's always a pleasure to be here. We're very excited about the upcoming school year, which is only a couple weeks away now.
Oh my God. Now, I'm totally confused. I did not miss your little quip where you said some of us think one kid a year is the most we ever get.
Right.
Because up until a couple years ago, I mean, I remember I graduated first class out of Milford High 222, and we're at 260, 40 years.
Right.
And then all of a sudden,
So this past year, we've had kind of unprecedented growth in the Milford Public Schools. We increased by 5%, which doesn't sound like a lot, but it comes to about 200 students. So we're up about 200 students, and generally, like we can flip 30 or 40 kids, but it stays within the same range of
200 students is almost half of a Brookside.
100%, 100%.
You know, I mean, you put it in perspective, what does a Brookside hold, 350?
Yeah, give or take.
Memorial,
Yeah.
300, 350?
Yeah, they're both about the same.
So you put in 200 kids, that's half a school.
Yeah.
Where did they come from?
So I think we're just having a boom in families moving into Milford. We're just seeing more and more families and students come in. And right now, it looks like our numbers are going to go even higher this year. And it's always hard to tell because some families move out and we don't necessarily know.
When you say higher, we're 4,200. Do you mean like 4,201?
So we were closer to 4,380 last year.
So 4,200, we jumped to 4,380 last year.
Yep.
Now,
and so I think we're going to start the year well over 4,400, which means it's going to go.
Lord.
Which means it's going to go even higher than that over the course of the year. So
we tend to pick up kids during the year, not lose them, right?
Correct. And I think that's the other thing we're seeing is what would happen is our churn rate was kind of, although our population was staying kind of stable, our churn rate was going up, meaning the number of families kind of coming and going. And I think what we're seeing now, and again, it's hard to tell because this is the second year we're seeing kind of increased numbers. So it's hard, like 2 years doesn't necessarily make a trend. It could still be an aberration. But we're seeing more kids staying and not like coming and going and coming and going. So I think that's part of the issue is our retention rates, I think, are going up. And we're also seeing an influx of students.
But if you add in 2 years 380 kids.
Correct.
That's a whole school.
100%.
What does that have as an effect? I mean, do the class sizes swell? Or?
So right now we're doing pretty well. We have two very large classes. Our current 8th and 9th grade are very large.
But 8th grade always, I mean, if I remember, 8th grade was like 360 or...
We always see students go on to like private high schools and BVT. And so, but
you'd lose 100 kids,
correct.
80 to 100 because...
Correct.
St. Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Yeah,
Marion, you got BVT.
100%. We see some kids go to the Catholic schools, the BVT, some other private schools, and we always see kind of an 8th to 9th grade churn, and that's natural anywhere.
But 9th grade is big?
9th grade is big.
Those don't go away.
Correct. We started higher, so we're going to have a much bigger. Our high school population could be over 1,300 this year potentially, or pretty close to it.
So Kathy's going to come with sharpened pencil.
Very possibly. We've added a number of faculty members over the past few years, which has helped. We're really looking at the numbers closely right now to see if there's anything we need to do. Our elementary numbers look pretty good right now, although it's sometimes hard to predict. And this is the difficult thing that I think the public needs to understand is we've had a pretty stable population up until last year.
Yeah,
and
we added one kid a year.
100%. And again, there'd be little fluctuations, and like the current 8th and 9th grade are just bigger classes, historically than they typically are. But this year and last year, we're seeing kind of just jumps that we haven't seen before. 200
kids, that's huge.
It's unbelievable.
Now, these aren't school choice kids. We'll talk about school choice later.
Mm-hmm. No, these are families that are living in Milford, so our Milford student-going population is increasing.
That's like 100 families.
I think it's probably a little less than that because we're seeing a lot of families with multiple kids, but it's probably in that vicinity.
But it's 50, 60 new families in Milford.
Correct.
So this is not something that people are choicing in or...
our choice in numbers have been higher, but we've really got to watch that now too because we can't, we've seen kind of a huge influx in demand. We've had to turn a lot of choice in kids away just because we want to make sure that the class sizes are manageable, you know, for our Milford residents.
Well, we'll talk about school choice, but
100%.
never did we say have Milford kids suffer
Correct.
so that we get the financial piece right.
Correct. And that's always been our philosophy at the schools too, is we want to make sure that, you know, if there's space in a particular class or grade level, we're more than happy to accommodate a student from another community. When there isn't, we really just can't do it.
Now, you talked about adding people. Sounds like there's a whole new cast of characters coming in.
There is, yeah. We've got a number of new administrators who I think are fantastic. A new Stacy Middle School principal, his name is Tahan Ross. He comes to us from the DC Public Schools. He was a Springfield native, so he's worked in New York City, Atlanta, and DC. And he impressed you know, the committees, he impressed me, and he's off to a great start. He's actually meeting with every single faculty member and kind of hearing just what they have to say and what they think is going well at the school, what they think is maybe some of the challenges are, and he's trying to bring everybody on board to try to
Now,
come
he's
together.
leaving DC to come to New England.
Yes.
Has he seen our winters?
You know, he's a Massachusetts native, so I think
Oh,
he's
okay.
coming, he's coming back home. He's Springfield, Western Mass, but he's coming back home.
Because I was going to say, I remember when we lived in DC, they predicted snow to the quarter inch.
Correct.
And at half an inch, they were saying snow emergency.
Yeah, if it ices over at all, the whole place shuts down. The Capitol is done.
So he's new as the principal of Stacy.
Correct. We have a new assistant principal. His name is Vico Lucas, and he comes to us from North Carolina. He's also a Massachusetts native. I'm not sure what town he's from, but he's also coming back home to Massachusetts. And he's a really bright guy. He's got a great science background. He's worked for like the National Science Foundation on some projects. He's worked with some consulting firms, and he's had some leadership experience in schools, and we've been very impressed with him. We've also added a new director of mathematics, and her name is Carrie Taylor. And she's got, she studied at the Harvard Graduate School of Education.
Oh, that little school.
And she's got great ties there and great connections. And she's worked in public schools in Massachusetts, a couple different districts. And I've really been impressed with her kind of analytic skills. I walked into her office today and she's poring over data, our data, matching it to our curriculum, and trying to, to come up with just some conclusions and ways to kind of where she can engage with our principals and teachers.
So they're working in the summer?
100%.
I mean, that's a good sign.
Yeah.
That somebody new comes in and they're working before they have to start.
Oh, she just hit the ground running too. So, I've been very impressed with our new team members. And Judy Dagnes, our longtime director of nursing, just recently retired. And we're going to miss Judy, obviously. She was fantastic, and she brought so much to the district. And I still think she's going to be engaged because I think she's going to mentor our new director of nursing. Oh, cool. Which is great. But we hired a new woman. Her name is Lee Wayne Gordon, and she comes to us from the Hudson Public Schools. And she's worked kind of regionally. She's worked in private practice in the healthcare field. And you just talk to her, and she's got a phenomenal personality. She, you just meet somebody and they put you at ease. She's got that, and plus she's just got a wealth of knowledge. And she's the person that other nurses would go to for information and questions. And it's really kind of a boon that we recruited her here to come to Milford.
Well, I like the trend that you're pulling people from Massachusetts.
Mm-hmm.
Over at the medical center, Phil Sirmacoli takes pride in trying to recruit people with ties to Milford.
Absolutely.
Because they stay.
100%. 100%. And plus they have a passion for the community, which, you can't put a price tag on that either.
That's a lot of new people.
It is. But 2 of the positions are brand new positions, and then 2 were, people shifting.
So now, a director of math.
Mm-hmm.
What does a director of math do?
So the director of mathematics does a few different things. One is she's going to work with our principals and our teachers on just curriculum, and that's horizontal and vertical alignment. So she's going to make sure that everything is aligned and connected to like the state standards. And she'll be providing professional development to our teachers, going into classrooms and kind of like providing feedback, as well as just looking at our curriculum from pre-K all the way up through high school, and making sure that the pathways we already have in place are getting kids to where they need to be, looking at the gaps that we have and closing those gaps, and trying to kind of make sure all the programming that we have in place is the best that it can be. And I'm very optimistic that we've got the absolute right person for the job. She lives, breathes, and eats mathematics. You start talking to her, and you try to turn the conversation in another direction, and she starts talking about the Pythagorean theorem or something.
And now, how are we doing in math overall?
So we're doing okay. I would say ELA we're doing generally pretty well. I think math is an area that I'm more concerned with, and I'd like to see our students perform a little bit better just across the board, whether it's on the MCAS tests, SATs, or any other measure that we have. So we're really looking to kind of put a lot of emphasis and focus in that area.
Now, the math would seem easier for somebody to pick up than the language.
So you'd think that, but the problem is the mathematics, the way the curriculum is designed today, has become so language heavy that
word problems.
Yeah, exactly. So a lot of the language is difficult, especially for some of our students who are learning English. So they're trying to dive into the technical math language as well as kind of do the math, and I think there's been more of a barrier there where you think the ELA would just like the writing and reading part would be more of a challenge, but they tend to kind of within a few years get more or less on track so they can access grade level curriculum. But the math is a little harder because you're trying to kind of access the language and the content at the same time.
How are the ELA programs, the immigrant programs, doing?
Very well. We're seeing our access for EL scores, which are kind of the MCAS for the EL student population, have been very good. The majority of our students are showing expected growth or beyond expected growth. Students are exiting the program at rates we expect them to exit the program in. The trick is the EL population, like any population, is multi-layered and faceted. So if we have students that come to us like kindergarten, first grade, they tend to do extremely well because they get into the program right away. When you're in kindergarten, everybody's starting school at the same time.
Yeah, but that was a lot of us that showed up in Milford School, didn't know English, but you grew up with the kids in kindergarten, and by first grade or so, you're all caught up.
Yeah, and that's what happens with a lot of our students. They usually pick it up within a couple of years, and they're usually kind of right on track. Where we see more challenges is if we get students in the middle or high school who not only have gaps in like they're learning the language, obviously, because they're speaking another language, but they also, a lot of the students that we see coming into the Milford Public Schools, they also have gaps in their learning.
But that was just fundamental. I mean, when my father came to Milford, he had his 4 years in the village.
Yep.
That was it. His 4 years of school.
Yep.
Now putting him into a high school with somebody who's had 8 years or...
Yeah, and it's the exact same thing. The students are very bright, they're wonderful kids, but they're missing key years of education, and it's really it's challenging to catch up. A lot of them are able to kind of get there, but it's much more of a challenge than the student that we get kindergarten, first grade, second grade, who can kind of jump in and really kind of get like the fundamentals of reading and math, pick up the English skills, and then when they kind of hit that reading to learn kind of phase, they might still hit some hiccups, but they're more or less ready to go.
I mean, new math director. Okay, I've not had any math whatsoever, and you're putting me in with kids in algebra.
Right. So we don't do that. We tend to have math classes that it almost kind of mirrors special education to some respect, where students have gaps in their learning or gaps in their understanding. So we kind of personalize the learning to that particular student and put them on kind of almost like an individualized plan. So if they come in and they're like in 9th grade and they have like a 3rd grade math background, we start to kind of backfill those skills. But you obviously have to move faster than a year's worth of learning because you're never going to catch up otherwise.
Yeah, and I mean, I think people have to realize when you say you put somebody on an IEP, it's not that they're handicapped, mentally handicapped, or they just weren't exposed.
Correct.
Put me in a school in Shanghai. Okay, here we go.
Yep.
I don't consider myself the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not the dullest. But
right.
I certainly would seem the dullest if everything around me was flying in Mandarin.
Correct, and that's a great point. Most of these kids are very bright. They're they're engaging kids, but they just had different gaps in their education. And again, we try to fill the gaps as best we can. The longer we have them for, the better we do.
Now, a couple of years ago, we got a bolus of kids from Texas and all.
Mm-hmm.
So our ELL population swelled.
Mm-hmm.
is it stabilizing? Is it still growing?
We're still seeing the numbers growing, but they're not the students that we're seeing coming from like the detention centers, kind of the unaccompanied minors. We're seeing kind of more families, and what we're seeing is, you know, families are moving in from, I think, like different parts of Massachusetts, different parts of the Northeast. But a lot of the families are staying in the community, which I think, you know, speaks to the Milford community as a welcoming community historically for, you know, immigrant families or families that are new to the area.
I didn't know there was that much room for 100 new families.
It's hard to say, but our numbers are jumping, and
We're going to go through the facilities plan, but, you know, we talk about, okay, the next school up on the hit parade.
mm-hmm.
Not that plan that got floated in the Milford Daily News. I mean, I got a kick out of that one. Whatever narcotics those people were on, they should have shared them, because a new school every 3 years and doubling the taxes in Milford. Yeah, I'm not sure, but whatever narcotics they're on, that's a wonderful view of life.
So one of the things we found going through this process is we're still kind of wrapping up the Woodland project. You know, we're still closing out a few different areas of the project and kind of wrapping up the punch list. And I know that sounds crazy because it's 3 years after the building is
Yeah,
open.
but a building that size?
Yeah, I mean, the punch list probably had over 1,000 items initially. We're probably down to half a dozen right now, and we're still, you know, kind of wrapping up a couple bigger ticket items that take a little bit longer to kind of remediate. But what you see with what we're seeing is with the MSBA is because the building projects are becoming more and more expensive, the cost of construction is escalating. They're able to fund fewer projects because the MSBA funding hasn't increased dramatically.
Right.
So you're almost seeing like your application to the MSBA as a town, like you're sending in your statement of interest. The return rates are kind of like getting into like a Holy Cross or an Ivy League school. They're accepting somewhere between 15 and 18% of the projects. So, you know, one of the things about an aggressive timeline is we knew going in it was unrealistic because we're probably not going to get accepted into the MSBA program maybe the first year or the second year we even put in a statement of interest. What's going to drive, and the high school has been identified as the top priority, what's going to drive that is because, like, our roof is going to need to be repaired in the next, you know, 5-ish years, and that's a pretty considerable
We
project.
did
in
$4.5
itself.
million the last time
And that
for
was
the roof.
close to 20-something years ago.
Right. Oh, God.
You know, it doesn't seem like it's that long, but it was. And so we'd really like to connect like the major systems project with either renovation or rebuild. And one of the things you do once you submit the statement of interest is you do a feasibility study. And what the feasibility study looks at is, you know, it looks at the square footage, it looks at the, you know, the land, and it looks at the land in town and says, you know, we're going to recommend that you do this or this.
But now, I get a kick out of it because
Mhm.
people say, well, are we going to build a new high school? Again, those narcotics come to mind. I mean, first of all, I mean, if you remember when we did Brookside,
Mm-hmm.
we built half a school.
Right.
We added on to Memorial, the high school, Woodland, we built half a school
Yep.
because we had to deal with 300 kids.
Mm-hmm.
1,200?
Yeah, that's a lot of trailers.
And when I think about it, first of all, the only place I can imagine land is Asylum Street.
Mm-hmm.
And who wants to bus kids all the way to that end of town?
And that was one of the sites they were looking at for Woodland. I think there was some transportation concerns.
But that was the biggest thing. You
Yeah.
sat there and said, wait a minute, what are you going to do to Lenny Marcone's budget?
right.
Right? And then the other thing is, I may be wrong, but I believe today, with the price of schools going up, things like swimming pools, auditoriums,
Mm-hmm.
the school building group just says, forget it, you don't get them.
Right, right. So those would have to be funded like 100% by the local community.
Or ignored.
Correct. So one of the couple things we have going for our high school is like our pool is one of the centers of the, you know, the high school community. We run like regional meets there. We have statewide conferences around like the swimming program. And we wouldn't want to lose that program because it's kind of one of the crown jewels of Milford.
But Kevin,
and plus
that's
it's a community pool too.
That's nice.
Yep.
What I think of is I wouldn't want to lose the convenience for the Milford families.
100%.
Because, you know, it's nice to wave the flag and have everybody come and say, wow, Milford. I
Mhm.
like it. But more importantly, the parents who are already stretched thin,
Right.
if they had to drive half an hour or 40 minutes to take kids, like a lot of the kids that come to Milford have to do,
Right.
that to me says save the pool just for that.
100%. It's a great community resource. It's great for our athletic program. It's great for our physical education program. The other thing that we have at the high school is a lot of square footage. And you know, you lose, like when we built Woodland, phenomenal school, but it's probably got about 300 students less than what the high school operates under. And it's probably, geez, off the top of my head, it's probably like 35 to 40% the square footage of what the high school currently is. And so I think if we were to do a new project, we'd lose a ton of square footage.
The Davern Auditorium.
Yeah.
I mean, Woodland, we had to go to a cafetorium.
Correct. Which is one of my least favorite words in the English language.
Well, but I mean, the old Woodland, I remember when we lost the stage
Yep.
in the cafeteria,
Yep.
because we had to put the music program
In
there.
the classroom, yeah.
We had to take them out of Mr. Moffat's janitorial closet.
Proud moments.
You know, so you sit there and say, wait a minute, forget there's no land.
Right.
If we try and build a new school, and this is just my opinion,
Yep.
we're going to give up some really neat things. I mean, I'd love to see the kids in Milford get a field house.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I go to places like Shrewsbury and all, and
Oh, they're fantastic.
oh, you know,
And in our outdoor facilities, as well as our pool, are like, you know, first class. Our gym is kind of like an older, you know, high school gym.
it's cute.
It is.
It's cute.
But you compare it to some of the other facilities, and it's just like like the outdoor facilities at Milford High School, the track, the football field, are, you know, like first class, first rate. And we have, again, similar to the pool, we bring like all kinds of programs there. You know, state Special Olympics event is there. It kind of runs the gamut. So, you know, you're probably right. It probably will end up being some sort of a renovation project.
Well, that
that'll
was
be
the same
phased
thing
in.
when they said, well, we should consider renovating Woodland, and I laughed.
Mhm.
I said, okay, guys, well, let's go through the political, you know, rigmarole. But at the end of the day, you know we're going to build a new school. And I'll throw my hat down now saying, I don't believe we're going to build a new high school. Not only for the fact that it would be $200 million, gulp.
Although I don't know if the renovation is going to be so far off. You know, again, with reimbursement, it'll be less than that, but I think it's going to be an expensive project.
100-ish.
Yeah.
You
yeah, I
know.
think that's probably.
Give us 8-9 years to save up. You know, you think about 8-9 years to save up, and we can go by without using profanity.
You know, always I like to be a little more aggressive than that.
Of course, that's your job and Kathy's.
Yep.
You know, and
But we'll say, you know, I think we've got a pretty good draft of the long-range ed facilities plan, and right now we've got it out to comment to the school committee as well as the long-range education facilities plan, and anybody from the public that wants to share their thoughts.
besides fixing the roof that always leaked,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, day one, winter of '73, to get to the cafeteria, there were 6 55-gallon or 35-gallon
Yeah.
plastic buckets for leaks. I got back when my daughter first went there. They're still there.
Yeah, and you know, we had some heavy rains this spring, and we had a similar situation.
The buckets came back.
Yep.
But if somebody was to say, why are you renovating the high school? Now, when it went in, I remember the technology. They had those phones with the rotary dials that you could call room to room.
Right.
We were all excited. That was high tech.
Yeah.
But why do
So-
we have to renovate the high school?
So, you know, most of the systems are original systems. So when you're talking about, like, you know, heat, plumbing, electric, and obviously they've been repaired and updated over the years, but they're original systems and they really need to be kind of replaced en masse. The other piece is like, and the reason Stacy kind of fell to number 2 is Stacy had a pretty major renovation in 1997. And the only thing we really did in the mid-90s with the high school is I think we did some things with the preschool classrooms, and we put the new roof on.
And the generator. And
Yeah. But I think, you know, from a systems perspective, I think the roof, and also, you know, you go into Woodland, and the building is set up for like a 21st century school. And it's funny, I remember Tim Kernan, who was brand new at the time, we're walking through about a week and a half before school was going to open, and first thing he said is this going to be ready for the first day of school? And I said, Tim, don't worry about it. And I'm going like this. But Woodland has all these spaces for students to collaborate and work together and work in small groups and really engage in in kind of an exciting educational experience. And the high school facility, like if it were a blank canvas, would be phenomenal because the space is incredible. But the classrooms are really set up for the 1970s. And we've really had to kind of cut it out because we have a lot more small group special education programming happening, a lot more small group English learner programming happening. We have programs like the business and banking program, hotel and hospitality, the construction trades that all require kind of different configurations of space. And we're going to make anything work and work well, but to really make the building kind of meet the needs of our current learners and the way schools operate today, we really need to kind of change how that space is being used.
The bunker itself, I mean, when I think of Milford High School,
it's a solid building.
Yeah, as I was saying, it's a bunker.
Yeah, it's a solid building. There's no question it's a solid building. And it's one of those great old brick buildings that keeps the heat in the summer and the cold in the winter.
But when I look at it, I don't see the walls crumbling.
No. I mean, again, I think the roof issues have been kind of ongoing. The systems issues, I think, the next 5 to 7 years, we're really going to have to kind of dig in a little bit. And I don't want to invest any money in the building that can't be kind of turned around to a newer project. And we just redid the technology infrastructure too. But a lot of that we can kind of transfer into the new, if we were to do a renovation. And a lot of the servers and the kind of the hardware is very easily transferable.
We have a chance to renovate in place.
Potentially, yeah, if they can phase it in. And the architects are very creative.
When I think about, you don't have to shut down the high school. You can shut down a wing.
Right.
Build a new wing. Build a new A wing. Shut it down, the old one. Move it in. Then move B to A. And just.
Yeah, and I think there's an opportunity where the catwalk is.
Yeah. To
really kind of put a new wing there, phase kids over.
Well, you could go up a story.
Correct. And someone was telling me, who was here even before the new building was put in place, that it was really designed to eventually put maybe a third story on.
Third story on.
Yeah.
It was structurally designed.
Correct.
That you could add a third story.
Correct. And that's a possibility where you might be able to take away some spots as you're kind of reconfiguring the whole building or shifting, as you shift parking and everything else around. And again, that's beyond my scope of expertise in terms of how that would work. But I've talked to a couple architects and they've kind of walked through what all the options would look like. And again, who knows where we would eventually land down the road. But they can envision things that you or I,
Yeah.
We see a tree, they see a canoe.
But I just don't see us abandoning the old Milford High School, just for the reasons we stated. We'd never build it again, because we'd have to do it out of our own pockets.
Correct, and you'd lose things like the quality of the auditorium, the size of the auditorium, because every square foot is accounted for with the MSBA, and rightly so, because they want you to maximize, the resources.
That's in Newton North.
We have our friends in Newton to blame for that one.
You sit there and say, okay, $200 and some million.
And that was probably close to 20 years ago now.
Yes. So today that would be like $400 million for a school.
Correct.
Oh my God.
Correct. So we'll see. I think there's, we're hearing a lot of support from the community to get the process underway. And we're kind of, the first step is kind of rolling out this long-range education facilities plan, engaging with the selectmen and the finance committee and the community at large, and kind of saying what's our process, what's our timetable.
Yeah, and I think one of the big things we keep asking for is, where's the long-range ed plan?
And a lot of that's tied into this, because we've got to connect the facilities to the educational programming.
Yes, that's what we're looking for.
Yep.
Tie the facility.
And that's what this
the tail goes on the dog.
That's what this document does.
Too many times we've heard the dog goes on the tail. We have a facilities plan and we'll give you the ed plan. It's like, no, tell me the ed plan.
No, and we're for the high school in particular, we're really seeing an increase in kind of STEM programming and career programming, and we've seen tremendous demand from the students. When we started the hotel and hospitality program, we filled every seat within a couple days of kind of opening it up, and we still see that each year. For the business and banking program, we're seeing a similar thing. We've got the Milford Federal branch right in the high school. Kids are going out and doing internships at 4 or 5 local businesses and corporations.
God bless Milford Fed. They're always there, no matter what this community needs.
They've been fantastic, and the folks they have working in the branch are great with the kids, and they've just been a great community partner. And every student who's gone through that program has loved the experience.
But more importantly, I've said it before, people like my father, put him in organic chemistry,
Yep.
not a pretty picture. Give him a tool, the man's an artist.
Yep.
In the old days, and I don't want to insult anybody, but if you wanted to go to college, you went to Milford High.
Mm-hmm.
If you were going to be a tradesman, or a tradesperson, I guess whatever the term
That's
is.
probably better.
Then you went to BVT.
Right.
Today, you could be the best carpenter in the world. If you're not in the top, whatever it is, 15% of the class, you're not getting into BVT.
So we're making programmatic adjustments to kind of meet the needs of some of the students that we have, and we put a building trades course in place, and that's been wildly successful, and the kids have kind of thrived in there, and we're seeing a lot of our students get great job offers, right out of high school, because there's such a demand in the construction industry right now. The other thing we're really looking at, and hopefully we'll have something in place in the next year or two, is an advanced manufacturing program. And obviously we're not going to put. We're obviously not going to put like a big, manufacturing floor in the high school.
Kevin, when we had the plant up in Worcester,
Mm-hmm.
it was hard to find
Mm-hmm.
qualified, and I say kids, but they're out of high school.
Right.
But those jobs are paying 50, 60 grand a year.
100%.
That's nice pay.
Yeah, and there's room for advancement. So what we're trying to do is kind of build, like, we've had a lot of conversations with people in the industry. And what they want is kids that have some decent like math and science skills, but not like the ability to do like calculus on demand.
Right.
But the ability to kind of like, if you're measuring something and you have to make an adjustment to a machine, you can kind of do those calculations. And
common sense, trade-related education.
And I want to say basic mathematics because it's a lot of critical thinking and logical thinking, so I don't want to minimize the skills, but they're looking for those types of skills, and they're also looking for quality human beings who will look you in the eye when they're talking to you, will shake your hand, will be able to carry on a conversation, will be able to kind of take down some specs and be able to implement what's happening. So we're trying to develop a program that builds kind of some of those soft skills and some of those kind of teamwork, team building skills, as well as some of the kind of math, science, and technical skills that they need. So they're walking into the job market. So for our kids who are going right into the world of work with kind of a real leg up.
Now, when you think about the program, somebody said, "Why don't you just put in this program?" People don't understand. You're limited that by law you can't compete with
Correct.
BVT.
Correct. So what we're doing is, and it might come as, and we're looking at a few different options right now. So it may turn into like an early college program where we partner with a community college and they take some courses through either the community college or in partnership with us to kind of get some kind of industry credentials that will give them things that advanced manufacturing outfits really recognize and value. So when they go into the workplace, they have a few of those kind of boxes checked that puts them at a huge advantage over someone just kind of walking in off the street.
Now, we look at the high school. I mean, obviously you've given us reasons, but is the space adequate?
So, the space is fantastic. The configuration of the space is not. So we're kind of maxed out in classroom space right now. But if you walk down Milford, like in Milford High School, the hallway, that main hallway is huge. And we've almost created like all these little mall kiosks like down the hallway. So we have like the Hawks Nest, the school store, the Milford Federal Bank branch. But in terms of classroom space, we're really kind of hitting our limit. I think Josh Otland's done a great job of doing some reconfiguration, and Rob Quinn as well, in kind of maximizing the space that we have. But there's a lot of kind of, I don't know what the term is, but maybe negative space where we have like these huge hallways, we have like classrooms that are kind of, chopped up from,
Can you last 8 years?
We can always do, we can make anything work with a smile on our face. My one worry is, we're getting to, when we get to 8 years, we're in that kind of red zone of kind of the useful life of like a lot of the major systems. And again, you know, we can kind of, you know, do repairs and updates, but we don't want to kind of replace, like, you know, the heating system. We don't want to do that kind of stuff.
By then, if we know, you know, you do a feasibility study, you go to Dr. Quinn and you say, okay, if we have to replace this system,
Right.
and we had a building with 10% more space or this or that, can you replace it now? And I know you'd have to reconfigure.
Yeah, yeah. So and those are the type of conversations we'd have to have eventually. But he's very good. Like he was, and Dr. Quinn's an apt title, because the stuff, some of the stuff he did with East in our last few years to keep the building kind of running and safe and you know, more or less comfortable for the students and the faculty was
Bubblegum master.
It was incredible. It was honestly
Somehow Band-Aids and bubblegum worked.
honestly incredible, because I had a few people that walked through there, and I said, you know, if we were to keep this as a school building, how much would it cost to kind of bring it up to speed? You don't even want to hear some of the figures I got, but it was, you know, in the $30 to $40 million range.
Oh, we're back to those narcotics. Now, number 2, Stacy.
Yep.
And it's funny because people say, well, we just renovated Stacy. But that was like 2 decades ago.
It was, yeah.
I mean, I'm one of them that just, didn't we just talk and vote on Stacy? And it's like, yeah, 20 years ago.
Yeah, and it does go by very quickly. And Stacy's in a similar boat, you know, to the high school with kind of some older systems. We don't have the roof issues that we have at the high school, just because it's just a different kind of a building. But similar things. I don't think the classrooms are particularly conducive to kind of the 21st century. And Stacy almost has the opposite problem. Where in the high school we have huge hallways. In Stacy, we've got like 12 different floors, and there's some just issues with the building itself. So you know, that's our second priority.
But how would you approach that? I mean,
You know, I think Stacy's one that we may actually look at potentially a new building there, and kind of reconfigure the space. Well, that's the
wipe out Town Park?
Maybe switch Town Park.
That's a dual Woodland.
Yeah. Like do a flip almost. But I think I'd be more leaning towards like a new building there. And again, the architects look at things and come up with amazing renovations. So I keep an open mind on all the projects, but I see that one as more potential for a new building than I do the high school.
But Milford Granite.
I know.
It's Milford Granite.
I know. There's going to be, and maybe there's a way to like,
I just remember when I first came back to Milford, I mean, I got a complex because every school I was in was gone.
Right.
West Street School's a parking lot. Oliver Street School's an apartment building. Spruce Street School's the library. And Stacy was boarded up.
Right.
And I remember the town having a soul-searching argument about logically, analytically, knocking down Stacy altogether and putting up an ugly glass school would be the most cost-effective.
Right.
But as a town, we said, wait a minute, no, that's us. That's Milford Granite. And we built a building, which cost more to build a building inside the Milford Granite.
Right.
So I wonder if Stacy isn't one where you build out and then renovate.
Again, I think it's possible. I think we're going to have a similar issue with just the number of students there, and I don't think we have the same flexibility. Like Milford High School, I think it's almost set up where you can kind of wing it all the way through. Where Stacy, that's going to be a lot more challenging.
Well, the other thing I can think of is the entryway to Stacy, that court.
Yeah.
Build new there.
Yeah, possibly.
And then shut down part of it, because unless you're going to build on the town park, but then get rid of all the Milford Granite? Blasphemy.
Yeah, so again, I think we'll cross that bridge in like maybe a decade plus.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear. I like that.
And then, you know, then we'll start, and again, this is much further out, but then we'll start looking at
the fancy school.
Well, I would say Memorial.
The fancy school. When we grew up, when we were Oliver.
Okay.
Oh, look, the Memorial. It had lockers. It had, you know, it had a cafeteria. It was the fancy school.
Yeah.
It's amazing how now, like, Woodland turned from being the fancy school.
Right. And you know, but I gotta say though, Memorial has a certain character that I just love. I was there this morning, and we actually run our summer lunch program out of there. And we had the fire department was there with a big fire truck, so the kids can go on it after they ate lunch. And it just, like just walking through the building, it's in really great shape. It really is. And it's, you know, it's just a nice building. Like even today, I think it's still a very nice building. I'd say the same thing about Brookside.
Well, I think Brookside will end up saving Memorial.
Yep.
Because realistically, it'd probably be more efficient to have one of the two of them survive. Except that both of them are in good shape.
Yeah, and there's no, like, we're not seeing the issues like with systems or anything like that. And again, you know, Memorial's had some updates over the years too. But, you know, I'd say, you know, the high school was 1, Stacy's 1A, and then I think Memorial becomes like a distant 2. And then, you know, and then in Brookside will be years off before we really do anything there.
I hope so.
And obviously Woodland is brand new.
I was going to say, don't even talk. You can't even talk.
We're just wrapping that one up.
The warranty isn't even
no,
up yet.
No, it certainly isn't, because I've been in a lot of those conversations. The only other thing that's going to potentially, and this won't just affect Milford, it'll be every community in Massachusetts, is there's been a lot of talk about universal preschool. And
what does that mean?
that means every preschool kid would go to like a public school, would have the option of going to a public school preschool. So I think Boston last year or this year is offering, I think either full preschool to 4-year-olds. I'm not exactly sure the program, but it's starting to happen. And it's probably going to happen at some point. I don't think it's going to happen in the next couple of years, but in the next 10 to 15 years, it probably will
So that'd be
happen.
another 300 kids?
Yep.
I mean, it's kindergarten, right?
Yeah, it's a kindergarten class, basically. So, you know, I think we just have to kind of file that away as something that's going to be a possibility in the future. I think one of the things that's just happened, and we were pretty early on in this, is like, remember kindergarten used to be kind of voluntary and half day.
Then it went to half day.
Yeah, and now pretty much everybody has full day. Not everybody in the state has full day, but most of the places do. Yeah, there's still a few places that don't have full day kindergarten.
Wow.
Yeah, or they do tuition based to get to, like, you know, from a half day to a full day program.
That's stinky.
It is, yeah.
I mean, you know, it's hard enough some of these families are barely making it now.
Right.
To turn around and say you got to pay for your child to go to full day
for half a day,
kindergarten.
for basically half a day of kindergarten, yeah. So I think it's off in the future, but I think it's something we need to keep our eye on, because it's something that's going to eventually come across, I think, every community in Massachusetts.
Keep that in mind when you do the high school, because that would be the logical, in my mind, is to add enough square footage onto the high school.
It's almost possible with the square footage that we have to have a full high school and a preschool, if it was kind of
No, but I'm
configured
thinking
correctly.
if we're going to renovate the high school, and you're going to build a wing, when you do it at the end of 3 years, when you're done, you got a whole new wing.
Mm-hmm.
So you make it a wing and a half, or you make it so that there's a separate entrance to keep the the little goofers safe and away from
in a different space.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I just think
So-
of the parking lot and the high school kids. They don't necessarily focus.
Well, they're the least experienced drivers we have.
Right. And having them around the little kids would be a scary movie.
It is, yeah, and that's why we have different times of dismissal and arrival, and there's a lot of kind of safeguards we put in place. So I think there's potential there. I really do. I agree with you. So that's kind of the broad strokes of the plan, but we're really trying to create like spaces, particularly at the high school and the middle school, spaces that allow for collaboration and flexibility, and can kind of meet like our STEM needs, our college and career readiness needs, and provide the kids with opportunities to really kind of engage in the type of coursework that's going to prepare them for whatever that pathway is. And realistically right now, we're preparing kids for kind of three things. We're preparing them for enrollment in a college or university. We're preparing them for employment. And we have a percentage of kids that go into the military. And we want you to be successful in either of those three paths that you go on.
So, okay, now your role as goalie for the javelin team.
Yep.
I'll bring up favorite subject and throw javelins.
Absolutely.
School choice.
Yep. Yeah. So we have kind of a dual thing going on. We talked about the increasing enrollment. We've seen kind of a leveling off of the choice out, and I think a slight decline. We've seen a big increase in the school choice in, which we're really going to, like I said, this year and next year
Now,
we're going to have to look at.
school choice out, rough
Yep.
numbers.
It's in the 180s, I would say,
Okay.
give or take. School choice in is probably in the 120s, maybe 130.
So it's a negative 60.
Give or take, yeah. Yeah, that's a fair number. Somewhere in the 50s or low 60s.
And you're saying, I'm not looking for dramatic, but
Yep.
last year was negative 60. Is this year in your mind negative 58 or?
It's tricky from a couple of perspectives. One is we've had to turn away a lot of school choice in, so that's going to affect like
Because of the
because
extra.
the extra students. Two is like if a particular class, like if our senior class had 20 kids who were school choice, out kids who graduated, then our numbers are going to look great.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the numbers are kind of like just
But,
vary by grade level.
realistically, this is just my opinion, I could see us stopping to look at the net
Mm-hmm.
and looking at school choice out.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we really aren't taking school choice in, because we got 180 new
and
kids.
we've reduced it dramatically. We've had to turn away. I don't even know the number, but probably 15, 20 kids already.
Yeah.
So I think the good news is it's leveled off. We had a period of time, probably 5 or 6 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, where it was kind of growing each year. The hard thing with choice in or choice out is once a kid leaves, they're
Gone.
kind of gone because you don't want to disrupt your kid's education. Sometimes a kid comes back because they have just a very negative experience in the district that they go to. But generally, just like Milford, most schools are really good. And a kid gets there, they join the community, they make friends.
We kept hearing that we had less than optimum woodland.
Mm-hmm.
Any way you went in and looked at it, it was not something that, ooh, please, I want to be here.
Right, right.
And we kept hearing that we're losing too many at that middle age.
Mm-hmm.
And once they go, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Especially once they hit 9th grade. I won't say you never get them back, but
It's right, and just like the kids that choice in, they tend to stay in Milford too. Like it's just because you want the consistency for your child.
well, they have all their friends. and,
Exactly.
I think it's more the social end that keeps them,
Mm-hmm.
because they're not going to go to a school that's, wow, this is great, or this is terrible.
Right.
But now with Woodland, maybe that leveling and slight decrease is that we're not losing as many middle school.
I think that's definitely a factor, and I think people are impressed. And Tim Kieran is doing great things at Woodland. Like academically, I think the programming's fantastic. We're going to start the process of reimagining like the Stacy Middle School program. We want to provide kids more choices, more thematic experiences that kind of plays more to the kind of students' interests. And I think that's going to have a huge impact at the middle school level too. And our advantage in this area is we're kind of the big kid in town, which sometimes is a disadvantage because
Well,
people say, "Hey, I want to go to like Hopedale because it's a lot smaller."
And if you think about it, when we heard people saying Milford's too big,
Yeah.
I want to go to a little school like
Yeah.
Hopedale.
And Hopedale as a district is the size of Stacy, Woodland, or the high school. So there's always going to be those group of families that just say, "Hey, this is kind of overwhelming for my child." And we're looking for kind of a smaller environment. But you look at Milford High School, and we have 39 sections that we're offering of AP, Project Lead the Way science courses, or early college courses that are considered, highly competitive courses for kids who are interested in college.
And see, a lot of people forget that when we talk about SPED in Milford, it's not just the kids who need help to get to the median.
Yep.
In my mind, SPED is the top 10%.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I remember we got banished. We ran out of science courses.
Yeah.
Uncle Paul, Mr. Raftery, when he was principal, sent 3 of us to Dean Junior College because he said, I got nothing for you.
Right.
Right? So 3 of us would 3 days a week go take chemistry and biology in Franklin at Dean Junior.
Right.
I'm really happy that kids, don't get me wrong, what he did for us was fantastic.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Because back then that was the only thing he could.
Right.
But it makes me feel really good that you don't have to leave Milford to go to a junior college to get that kind of education.
Yeah, and we're bringing in, LaSalle College has ran a great program this past year. It was a 1-credit course for students who are interested in getting into teaching or education. And we had, I want to say somewhere between 5 and 8 kids that took the course. First time we did it. And they went onto the LaSalle campus once. They did some online work. One of the professors came out here. And one of the students that took the class got a full scholarship to LaSalle.
Cool.
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of just really great benefits from this type of programming, and we're bringing like the college experience here. So Framingham State, Mass Bay, LaSalle will all be offering programs on campus that either our teachers are teaching the courses because they've worked with the college or university, or they're going to be co-teaching it with a Framingham State professor, and so the kids will have that kind of experience.
I mean, I just got involved in a new program, Connections.
Okay.
Tony Chinapi called and said,
yeah.
okay, we're setting up a program to mentor first-generation immigrants over 4 years.
Right.
I thought that was the coolest thing in the world because
It's fantastic.
I had no idea when I showed up at the school system what I should be doing or how, you know, if it wasn't for Paul Raftery and Dr. Salvia, they took special interest in kids. But we never had programs.
Right. So we're really trying to develop like those opportunities because like you've been through the financial aid morass and the application process and just picking the schools and understanding deadlines. And it's more complicated than doing your taxes.
Well, I think the biggest thing was I'm at Milford High.
Yep.
I kind of like biology. I really like chemistry. But I have no idea what I should do.
Right.
And well, Dr. Salvia was ex-Holy Cross.
Yep.
So
there's one place to go.
yeah, to him there was purple and there was not purple.
Right.
And he convinced me and Pete Salazzi, even a couple of us that went up there, and we got in. Of course, when I see what it takes to get in there today, I realize I'd never get in now. But
isn't it crazy?
Oh,
it's crazy.
And it's such a huge decision because back then it was $6,200 a year, all in.
Yep.
And you know, for somebody like me who looks at their parents, Mom worked at Draper's as a drill press operator, making a whopping $11,000.
Right.
My father was making the big money at $20,000 at General Motors. But you know, you sit there and say, wow, I better make something out of this education because this is a huge part of their salary.
But today you see like a Holy Cross is about 70,000, give or take.
It's 69 and change.
Yep. Yeah. And you look at the average, like the median income in Massachusetts, and it kind of lines up. Like and again, there's financial aid, and nobody really pays. Very few people pay the sticker price, but it's so much less affordable today.
Few of us did. Unfortunately, a few of us. When Emily let it be known to Holy Cross that she was only applying to Holy Cross, and that was the only place she was going.
You kind of lose your leverage.
Yeah, there's no leverage. We applied early decision.
Yep.
And I remember when she got accepted, I looked at my darling bride and said, should I be happy that I just spent $250,000?
Yeah.
You know, my God.
It's crazy. So I think, you're absolutely right. So providing that kind of mentoring and support, because kids really, like, a lot of kids, you talk to middle school kids and they say, where do you want to go to, they want to go to Duke because Duke just won the basketball.
Because of basketball.
Yeah. Or, Oklahoma or
you hear, why
Clemson.
Gonzaga? Because the name sounds cool.
Yeah, so they really don't have a sense of like just the wealth of college options right in the kind of New England area, and even right in Worcester. And Worcester's got a ton of colleges, universities,
funny
options.
because when my oldest, ungrateful offspring #1 started, people told me, best advice I ever got, don't try and influence. And Lexi immediately says, I'm going to look at the College of Pluto, the University of Mars. How far can I get away from Milford?
Yep.
And then you just stood back and you saw the concentric circles got smaller and smaller. And then she decided to go to Worcester. I was in heaven.
Yeah.
I got to see her.
Right.
And Emily at Holy Cross, we got to see twice a week.
Right.
This was heaven. Now, you only saw her 10 minutes.
Right.
But you went up there, you got your kid fix.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And that's all you need.
But the kids didn't understand that they were far enough away from home
So they had that independence.
that they had their independence.
Yeah.
But close enough that, come midterms or finals, we'd get the call, a lot of us could really do with a home-cooked meal. And all of a sudden, this army of cars shows up, and my wife is cooking. So,
But that's fun, though. You probably miss that now.
Oh, God, do I ever.
Yeah.
But actually not a lot because the kids still come. We still had armies of them showing up when we went to the Cape. But I wouldn't trade it.
Right.
And I don't think the kids understand the benefits. And certainly around here,
Mm-hmm.
you can't touch the schools.
Well, you've got the Boston area that has tremendous schools. Providence has a whole host of colleges and universities.
Connecticut.
Worcester kind of, and even right up by, the Seven Sisters in Western Mass are fantastic schools. So we're really looking for folks in the community that can really support some of our first generation students that, kind of through that process, like what classes should I take? What's out there,
Just
beyond
life
college.
lessons.
Yeah.
Because I think people unfortunately think, well, I'm doing okay financially, but I can't afford to sponsor another kid.
Right.
And a lot of times, I mean, what Tony's going through, it's not financial.
Right.
It's just talk to them, what's
Right.
available.
Right.
Mentor them. And that doesn't cost a lot of money, and it doesn't take a lot of time.
And what kids don't understand too is there's a lot of like everybody has obstacles. Like you get into that class and you struggle, but you have to push through.
Yeah.
And some kids who maybe don't have a parent or somebody in the home that's been to college doesn't understand because they haven't been through it, and just that lack of knowledge that they say, well, go to an easier class. No, push
Push
through.
harder.
Yeah, push through.
But the other thing is, who listens to their parents?
I think more people than you think.
Yeah, but I mean, it's funny because we always
They don't
say,
act like they listen, but they listen.
what's an expert? Well, that's somebody from out of town.
Right.
It's
right.
somebody from a different family.
100%. Yeah, you can never be a prophet in your own land.
That's it. Well, thank you for everything you're doing. Looking forward to hearing more exciting things as the year goes on.
And maybe I can bring some of our new folks on the show. Maybe
That'd be
this year,
great.
just so the community can kind of get to know.
Especially, when everybody wants to know who their principal is.
Absolutely.
So, to bring a principal and an assistant
Yep.
from Stacy, that would be great, just so people see the face and feel
Yeah.
comfortable.
Let's try to do something maybe in the early fall. We'll
That
bring,
sounds
we'll bring
great.
those two guys in so people can kind of get to know them.
As always, it's amazing what's available in the Milford school system. I joke about being vanquished or banished to Dean Junior College half my senior year. But that was because there were two people in Milford that were Milfordians. Two people that had their hearts set to help kids. That tradition is carried. I see the staff and the special needs staff, not just being the teachers who help them get to the mean, but the teachers who go their extra and take the top 5-10% to be our next Nobel laureates. Get to know what's available. You don't have to do a lot, but a little bit will really help your children. And I can tell you, the teachers I've been involved with really care. So as always, good night to our 6 loyal viewers. May God bless, and may tomorrow be a better day than today. Good night.
Not too long since I've been home. Been running all my life